Some of the greatest stories ever told start behind bars, locked up in the most notorious prisons in the world.
You might have to be a real-life professor of the famous Money Heist series to plot an escape from this prison.
Who would even try to escape this impregnable fortress?
In this video, we will talk about what makes this prison the most talked about.
Supermax is the place that America sends the prisoners it wants to punish the most.
And how life was in this prison of some famous criminals who were caught. Is it the inmates or the high-tech facilities and architecture that make this prison stand out? Let's find out. What sparked the construction of ADX Supermax? A tragic series of events unfolded back on October 1983 at the United States Penitentiary in Marion, when Thomas Silverstein and Clayton Fountain, members of the Aryan Brotherhood, fatally stabbed correctional officers Merle Klutz and Robert Hoffman. These attacks occurred just hours apart and were attributed to flaws in the prison's design. In response to these shocking incidents, Norman Carlson, the director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, proposed a solution that a new facility need to be designed to isolate the most dangerous and uncontrollable inmates for enhanced security and safety. Under Carlson's leadership, the prison as it then was placed under permanent lockdown for 23 years, establishing a proceeding that led to the construction of ADX Florence as a control unit prison. Carlson believed that such measures were necessary to contain inmates who exhibited a complete disregard for human life, and often resorted to extreme violence even within the confines of a prison. ADX Supermax Prison. Fast forward to January 10, 1995, the ADX Florence officially started operating. Designed by two leading architecture firms in Colorado Springs, ADX Supermax Florence was constructed for $60 million. Symbolizing a significant investment in advanced security and corrections infrastructure. The launch of ADX Florence is a game-changer in the realm of high-security prisons, representing a blend of innovation and a strong commitment to public safety, specifically addressing the unique challenges associated with managing the most dangerous offenders. Now designated as a Supermax or control unit prison, what does this entail? Imagine a facility designed to confine the most high-risk inmates, those deemed too dangerous for standard maximum security prisons. Here, inmates primarily live in their cells, with minimal human interaction and limited activities, also known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. This isn't your average prison. It's a high-security labyrinth meticulously managed by the Federal Bureau of Prisons, all under the vigilant oversight of the United States Department of Justice. But has made ADX a global sensation? Well, it stands as an early archetype of the Supermax model, pioneering the concept of ultra-high security detention. Situated within the Federal Correctional Complex Florence, ADX is a critical component of a larger network of correctional facilities, each tailored to varying degrees of security needs. Curious about what sets this prison apart? Step inside, and you'll encounter an architectural marvel, meticulously engineered with cutting-edge security measures. From reinforced concrete walls to state-of-the-art surveillance systems, every detail of this fortress is designed to deter, contain, and control. Intrigued by its mystique, one may wonder, what lies behind those impenetrable walls? How does ADX Florence achieve unparalleled levels of security and control? Notorious prison versus dangerous inmates. The ADX incarcerated 320 male inmates as of March 25, 2024, each categorized within one of 6 security levels. Although built to accommodate 474 inmates, it has never reached full capacity. This facility is renowned for housing individuals deemed too dangerous, high-profile, or security risks for even maximum security prisons. Consider Joseph Romano, for instance, who received a life sentence for orchestrating the murder of a judge and federal prosecutor involved in his prior coin fraud case. While imprisoned, he also conspired to kill an undercover officer from his investigation. This resulted in his transfer to ADX. The majority of current inmates at ADX are there due to their history of committing violent crimes, including murder, against corrections officers and fellow inmates in other prisons. These inmates are kept in administrative segregation, spending 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. During their 1-hour daily recreation period, which can occur at any time, they are restrained for exercise and a phone call if earned. Their diet is restricted to prevent self-harm or unsanitary conditions in their cells, and some cells even have showers to minimize interactions with correctional officers. After at least 1 year, inmates with good conduct may earn longer periods out of their cells. The ultimate aim is to keep them at ADX for a maximum of 3 years before transferring them to less restrictive prisons to serve the rest of their sentences. One notable cell block at ADX, formerly known as Bombers Row, housed 5 notorious terrorists, including Timothy McVeigh, Terry Nichols, Ramzi Youssef, Eric Rudolph, and Ted Kaczynski. Despite stringent security measures, violent incidents have occurred at ADX. Silvestre Rivera and Richard Santiago were charged with the first-degree murder of Manuel Torres, a high-ranking member of the Mexican Mafia, in 2005. They brutally attacked Torres in the prison yard, resulting in their life sentences. Also, within ADX formidable walls reside some of the nation's most notorious figures. Leaders of violent gangs, domestic terrorists, and even international operatives from organizations like Al-Qaeda have all found themselves confined within its high-security cells. Take Zacarias Moussaoui, the notorious figure associated with the 9/11 attacks. He is the sole individual convicted in a civilian court for this terrible event and is now housed at ADX. But Moussaoui is not alone in this maximum security haven. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, a perpetrator of the Boston Marathon bombings, joined the ranks in 2015, adding another layer to ADX inmates. The roster doesn't end there. Inside these walls you'll find the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, the shoe bomber Richard Reed, Oklahoma City bomber accomplice Terry Nichols, Olympic Park bomber Eric Rudolph, and Soviet spy Robert Hansen, all housed within the secure confines of ADX prison. Indeed, ADX stands as a testament to the lengths taken to house some of society's most dangerous individuals in a controlled, secure environment. What lies beyond the well-known name of this correctional facility? Let's take a look at the inner workings of this extraordinary prison. The harsh architecture of the ADX. The architecture of the building itself is all about control. They've intentionally designed it so inmates can't even see the sky. And those wires you see? They are to prevent helicopters from landing. Inmates here have limited contact beyond guards and staff, so when they're taken out of their cells, they're in full restraints. Leg irons, handcuffs, stomach chains, all escorted by guards. For recreation, they get an hour in an outdoor cage that's just slightly larger than their cells, and even there, they only manage to see the sky. As you move through the facility, you're passing by hundreds of cameras, with metal doors, and much of what you see is above ground. But there's a hidden underground corridor connecting the cell blocks to the lobby. Inside each cell, almost everything is crafted from solid poured concrete. The desk, stool, and bed. The toilet automatically shuts off if it becomes blocked, and the shower has a timer to prevent flooding. The sinks are designed without potentially hazardous taps for safety reasons. Inmates have access to polished steel mirrors, electric lights controlled by the inmate, a radio and a television offering recreational, educational, and religious programming, plus mainstream channels and Netflix. At ADX, inmates look through 4-inch by 4-foot windows that show only the sky and roof, keeping their precise location hidden and preventing any escape attempts. Exercise at ADX is limited to a concrete pit resembling an empty swimming pool, where inmates can take only 10 steps in a straight line or 31 steps in a circle. Meals are typically delivered to cells, although transferred inmates may sometimes dine in a shared room. The facility is equipped with motion detectors, cameras, and 1,400 remote-controlled steel doors, all monitored constantly from a central control center. If there's any suspicion of an escape attempt, a single panic button can instantly seal every door. Surrounding ADX are pressure pads and 12-foot razor wire fences, closely monitored by heavily armed officers. Inmates at ADX are housed in 6 security levels, each serving specific purposes. The control unit holds those with serious conduct violations or deemed threatening. The H unit accommodates terror group members or individuals under special administrative measures, while Range 13 provides the highest level of control for specific inmates. During a rare media tour, visitors were struck by the eerie quiet and saw firsthand the strict security measures that give ADX its unique reputation. Unlike state-level prisons, ADX faces less criticism because of its strong and effective punishment methods. No wonder it's known as the worst prison in America. Coping and self-destructive behaviors. According to court documents, inmates at ADX have described having delusional conversations with voices they hear in their heads, or engaging in behaviors like spreading feces, other waste, or body fluids around their cells, or toward correctional officers. Former Warden Hood pointed out that when individuals are confined to a box for 23 hours a day indefinitely, they develop unique coping mechanisms. He wondered whether behaviors like disrobing and throwing feces were signs of mental distress or expressions of self-destructive tendencies. This harsh environment poses deep challenges for inmates, raising complex questions about the human mind under extreme conditions. Since ADX began operating, at least 6 prisoners have taken their own lives, primarily by hanging themselves with bedsheets. Thomas Silverstein, who was confined for years in isolation, including at ADX with 9 others, expressed conflicted feelings about his situation. He stated that he wanted to live and had always been a survivor, but he often wished for death. However, he clarified that he did not actually want to die. Rather, he desired a life in prison that he could fill with some meaning. Laura Rovner, a University of Denver College of Law professor representing ADX prisoners, compared conditions at ADX to those at Guantanamo Bay, suggesting that for many, life at ADX is akin to a form of living death, stripping away all meaningful existence. Rovner emphasized that mentally ill and younger inmates like Tsarnaev, who endure prolonged isolation, face significant vulnerability. She described the idea of spending decades in solitary confinement as almost impossible to fully grasp. In 2008, a step-down program was implemented for the H unit, consisting of 3 phases, each lasting at least a year, with increasing privileges over time. Hood recognized that intellectually inclined inmates like the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, often spend much of their time reading. However, many other inmates lack coping skills and may engage in disruptive behaviors because of the absence of educational or productive activities. Prisoner advocates are worried about inmates in the H unit who are not advancing in the step-down program because the special administrative measures have not been modified, despite spending extended periods there. The prison superstar, Ramzi Youssef, the terrorist. Ramzi Youssef's story unfolds within the stark confines of ADX, where he serves multiple life sentences plus an astonishing 240 years for his role in harrowing terrorist attacks, including the 1993 World Trade Center bombing that claimed 6 lives. For over a decade, Youssef has been in solitary confinement, residing in the H unit under strict special administrative measures. Amnesty International reports that Youssef has been on Step 2 of the Step Down program for more than 2 years, but has been unable to progress to Step 3, with his special administrative measures renewed annually. Despite this, Youssef has maintained a clear conduct record for over 5 years, allowing him to work as an orderly and spend a few hours each week outside his cell cleaning other areas. Former Warden Hood described Ramzi Youssef as a complex figure. Unlike the famously personable mob enforcer Sammy the Bull Gravano, Youssef displayed unexpected civility. Despite their opposing positions, Hood found Youssef to be civil, disciplined, and well-trained, which led to a unique level of interaction within the prison walls. Reflecting on their exchanges, Hood emphasized the uncommon contrast in their roles, acknowledging the inherent conflict while preserving a sense of mutual respect. During Tsarnaev's trial, ADX's current warden, Oliver, portrayed the prison more positively. He highlighted the limited privileges that inmates in special security units have, such as mailing letters, exercising, making brief phone calls, and engaging in writing projects. This portrayal offers a nuanced perspective of life behind the formidable walls of ADX, showing that even the most notorious individuals experience a range of interactions and conditions. Inside the worst prison in America, there he stood covered in tattoos, quietly reflecting on his notorious past. His body art told the story of his street life, loyalty to his crew, and the scars of battle. This man was Rico, once feared on the streets for his connections and toughness. Now, confined within the prison's stark walls, Rico was just another inmate grappling with his past. The tattoos that once symbolized power and pride now served as reminders of a life derailed by crime. Standing in isolation, memories flooded back, the highs of street life, the gang, and the rush of living on the edge. However, these memories were brief and soon overtaken by the harsh reality of imprisonment. Rico grappled with the stark truth of his situation within the confines of his cell. Despite the restraining bars, Rico held on to hope and imagined a path to redemption that extended beyond these walls. He yearned for a chance to transform his life and leave behind the shadows of his past. As Rico navigated the challenges of prison life, he held on to the belief that his artistic pursuits could lead to a brighter future. His dreams of redemption fueled his determination to break free from the cycle of crime and work toward personal growth and reconciliation. Despite the difficult environment, Rico's unwavering hope and creative spirit inspired those around him. Through his artwork, Rico found solace and purpose, using his talents on a transformative journey of self-discovery and redemption within the confines of prison. Now that he's incarcerated in one of the toughest prisons, do you think Rico genuinely feels remorseful for the life choices that brought him here? Is he seeking a genuine change? Or is he simply enduring the hardships of confinement? Don't forget to share your thoughts with us in the comments. Highly debated prison facility renowned for its extreme isolation. A group of 11 inmates joined forces and brought a case against the Bureau of Prisons known as Cunningham v. The inmates accused the prison system of consistently mistreating and neglecting prisoners with serious mental illnesses. The urgency of the lawsuit was underscored by several tragic suicides that occurred among inmates, with one occurring even after the lawsuit was initiated, prompting the addition of more plaintiffs to the case. Critics have long contended that prolonged solitary confinement can severely impact prisoners' mental health, a concern supported by numerous studies. By March 2015, efforts were underway to address these issues through legal proceedings with a federal magistrate, and the Bureau of Prisons had already made some modifications. Prisoners in Unit H are subjected to additional restrictions, known as special administrative measures, which prevent them from communicating with journalists or even having private conversations with their lawyers or family members. Then there's the story of Julian Assange. In 2020, a British judge ruled against extraditing him to the United States on spying charges, partly due to concerns that he might face solitary confinement or special administrative measures at ADX. In July 2021, the High Court of Justice for England and Wales allowed the United States to appeal that decision, but clarified that Assange would not be subject to those harsh conditions if extradited. Famous Abu Hamza trapped. Abu Hamza was arrested by British police under the Terrorism Act of 2000, which deals with instigating acts of terrorism. Although charges against him were initially dropped on August 31, 2004, he remained in custody as the United States pursued an extradition case against him, and British authorities prepared additional criminal charges. Abu Hamza was reported to have sought release on compassionate grounds from the United States Supermax prison where he was held. The former imam of London's Finsbury Park Mosque received a life sentence in 2015 after being extradited to America on terrorism and kidnapping charges. He was living in solitary confinement at ADX Supermax prison and claimed that complications from COVID-19 had left him too sick to endure the harsh conditions, according to his lawyer. Although an earlier appeal against his extradition had been rejected by the European Court of Human Rights, which ruled that the prison conditions would not amount to ill treatment, Hamza's lawyer intended to challenge the draconian conditions of confinement at ADX in his latest appeal. Hamza's health had reportedly deteriorated due to multiple bouts of COVID-19 and ongoing 24/7 solitary confinement over the past 8 years. Among his charges were overseeing the kidnapping of 16 tourists in Yemen in 1988 and organizing a terror training camp in Oregon, United States. Catherine Forrest, a former United States District Court judge, stated during his sentencing that the world would not be safe if he were ever released. An unnamed prisoner. An anonymous inmate reflected on his unique journey, emphasizing the significant change experienced from solitary confinement in ADX to a general population setting within a North Dakota state penitentiary. He recounted the drastic shift as a profound culture shock, adapting to an environment that allowed for more personal interactions and different attitudes among fellow inmates. The transition unveiled unexpected encounters and conversations with prison officials, such as Deputy Warden Foster, who candidly addressed the distinctive prison dynamics and cautioned against potential affiliations with prison gangs. These interactions contrasted sharply with federal protocols, where formalities and distance were the norm. While initially apprehensive about sharing a cell with another inmate, his initial fears turned to frustration as they navigated encounters with a non-violent parole violator named Adam, who displayed a casual disrespect, prompting reflections on personal growth and change. Furthermore, the individual expressed shock and disdain upon discovering a significant presence of sex offenders within the prison population, highlighting disturbing crimes and the consequential prison dynamics. The deep-seated anger towards such offenders revealed a raw emotional response to the severity of their actions. Despite facing challenges, the inmate recognized positive aspects of their new environment, such as educational opportunities, job availability, and amenities like the commissary. Despite the contrasts and complexities, they remained determined to defy recidivism statistics, rebuild familial connections, and address the enduring impacts of prolonged solitary confinement on their well-being. This narrative encapsulates the profound adjustments and emotional complexities experienced by an individual transitioning from a federal Supermax prison to a state penitentiary, highlighting the pursuit of personal growth and rehabilitation within a dynamic and sometimes challenging prison environment. Larry Hoover was here. Hoover, known as King Larry of the Black Gangster, was implicated in ordering the killing of a drug dealer named William Young in 1973, allegedly for theft from the gangster disciples. Hoover was subsequently sentenced to 150 to 200 years in prison. However, federal investigations later revealed an extensive network of gang leadership orchestrated by Hoover from behind bars. He was implicated in overseeing a vast and highly profitable criminal enterprise, which included more than 30,000 gang members across 35 states. Fast-tracked to 1995, Hoover faced further legal troubles when he was convicted of drug conspiracy and extortion charges. This led to his transfer to the ADX, the infamous federal Supermax prison in Colorado. Inside the ADX, Hoover's influence and control over the gangster disciples persisted despite his incarceration. Hoover's story highlights the enduring and complex nature of gang leadership, even from within the confines of a high-security prison. His capacity to sustain control and supervise criminal activities from inside prison highlights the difficulties law enforcement encounters in combating organized crime and gang-related violence nationwide. Michael Swango wasn't left out. In the year 2000, Michael Swango was sentenced to life in prison at ADX Florence. During his incarceration, Swango's former colleagues in Quincy reflected on his descent into criminality. They discussed the sense of betrayal felt by those who had once trusted him as a physician bound by the Hippocratic Oath. Brent Unmisig commented on the breach of trust, while John Landis expressed a belief in Swango's psychological inability to grasp the seriousness of his actions. Despite the passage of time, Judge Dennis Cashman felt compelled to continue discussing Swango's case, aiming to raise awareness and prevent similar tragedies. Many mourned the wasted talent and intellect of Swango, reflecting on what could have been. Unmisig and Landis reflected on their lingering questions about Swango's motives, wondering aloud why he would commit such acts of violence. They acknowledged the challenge of understanding someone with such mysterious thoughts. Efforts to interview Swango at ADX Florence were met with denial, and letters requesting reconsideration went unanswered, leaving Swango's thoughts and motives forever hidden. Instances of suicide. In Denver, there was a concern about a 29-year-old prisoner at the federal Supermax in Florence who had been exhibiting disturbing behavior, including making sculptures out of his feces and smearing it on himself. This raised alarm, particularly in light of recent suicides at the facility and a perceived lack of care for the mentally ill. Ed Aro, a partner at Arnold & Porter in Denver, filed an emergency motion requesting that a man named Jonathan Francisco be transferred from ADX for medical evaluation and treatment. The Bureau of Prisons agreed to the transfer. Aro expressed concern about Jonathan for more than a year, indicating relief that the Bureau was finally arranging for his transfer to a medical facility and hoping that he would receive the necessary assistance. Francisco, who is serving a sentence until 2040 for a weapons conviction and the murder of a fellow prisoner in Louisiana, had been unresponsive since before entering ADX in September 2011. Living alone in a small cell without social interaction, Francisco's behavior has become increasingly disturbing. According to Aro's motion filed in the United District Court, it was stated that Francisco was receiving no meaningful ongoing mental health treatment for behavior that was considered disturbing even by ADX standards. The motion also indicated that the available evidence suggested that the BOP's response to his situation thus far had been inadequate. Concerns about Francisco's mental status heightened following the recent suicide of fellow ADX prisoner Robert Knott, who was also mute. Knott's suicide underscores ongoing issues at ADX and raises questions about the effectiveness of measures taken by the Bureau of Prisons. The class action lawsuit challenges ADX's treatment of mentally ill prisoners and accuses its mental health staff of being unresponsive to mental health emergencies. Francisco's legal team hopes for a transfer to a mental hospital, similar to the case of Richie Hill, who was moved out of ADX due to severe mental health issues. Conditions at other facilities can also be challenging for inmates like Jack Powers, who described his experience at Springfield as mentally taxing. Cost of maintenance. ADX Supermax prisons, unlike standard maximum security facilities, come with a hefty price tag, costing about 3 times more on average. For instance, back in 1999, it cost a whopping $32,383 annually to house an inmate. In contrast, the cost at Colorado Correctional Center was almost $19,000 per inmate, which was just 57% of the ADX cost. Why the steep price difference? Well, ADX prisons demand state-of-the-art technology to maintain top-notch security. This means high-security doors, reinforced walls, and sophisticated electronic systems to keep tabs on inmates and prevent escapes. And let's not forget about the increased staffing needed to oversee these complex facilities and their high-risk occupants. All this investment is aimed at one thing: ensuring that ADX prisons can securely house the most dangerous offenders in the system. By employing these stringent security measures, authorities aim to minimize risks both inside and outside the prison walls, enhancing public safety and efficiently managing inmates classified as high-security risks. However, while these measures are critical for maintaining order and security, they don't come cheap. Supermax prisons require significant financial resources to operate and maintain, highlighting the substantial investment needed to keep these facilities running smoothly and safely. In short, the advanced security features of Supermax prisons are essential for safeguarding communities and managing high-risk inmates, but they certainly come with a hefty price tag attached. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.